Hello Eorzeans, I'm Lukiel Bravestone, your favorite 1.0 archaeologist extraordinaire. Last week we looked back at the dark and gloomy Black Shroud and its Bent Branch area, as well as the original notorious monster system. Today we're returning to my favorite 1.0 location, La Noscea. We're more specifically headed to the eastern part of La Noscea to revisit Camp Bloodshore. Camp Bloodshore was a tiny encampment near the shore of eastern La Noscea, close to the entrance of Cassiopeia Hollow, which we covered in an earlier episode. The camp was also the end point of the Lathagran East Road and connected to Wineport further north. The camp was home to two merchants, Daniel and Alistair, Gate Warden Brunadir, Quartermaster Kokomui, as well as a Battle Warden. A chocobo caravan would depart from Bloodshore, led by Sergeant Friont, Arlth, and Skyfrin, headed to Wineport. Bloodshore could also offer gatherers a plethora of ores, wood, herbs, and nuts, and because of its extensive shoreline, also offered a wide range of fish. Look at that Biancan bream. How cute. Ugh. The whole area was located so far northeast it was considered a high-level zone, with monsters ranging from level 30 to 50. Leave quests in this zone would also range between, well, level 30 to 50. The name Bloodshore comes from the famous killings that took place in the area. Some 50 years ago in 1.0 time, the pirates League of Lost Bastards and the crewmen of Rightshire Mistbeard fought on the sea just off Bloodshore. It is said that by the end of it, 4 galleys had sunk and hundreds died. As a result, all the blood and debris drifted aground at Bloodshore, dyeing it red. Camp Bloodshore had a whopping 4 ethereal gate connections. To Tiger Helm Island and South Bloodshore to the southeast, Ageless Wise to the north, and Cassiopeia Hollow. What's interesting about Bloodshore is how different it is from other areas in La Noscea due to its sandy beach to the east, leading into South Bloodshore. This ethereal gate location consisted of a lower beach level and an upper mountain level. The ethereal gate itself was located on the beach level and was home to several leave quests, as well as a handful of mobs unique to the Bloodshore region. Walking through the upper level of South Bloodshore, you'd eventually end up at a bridge connecting South Bloodshore to the second ethereal gate location, Tiger Helm Island. Like the name suggests, this was an island, very similar to South Bloodshore. However, this island had no beach level, but instead had a bridge connection to this mess. It is unclear if these smaller islands were part of Tiger Helm Island or not, but I always assume they weren't, as the name Tiger Helm Island suggests that it's just that one island. Anyway, these tiny islands were connected with several bridges, and leave quests connected to Tiger Helm Island would often take place here. Let's head all the way up to Ageless Wise. In 1.0, this area was highly insignificant. It's probably something I should clarify right away. On most maps in 1.0, the further north you got, the higher the difficulty and level requirement. And because 1.0 was highly unfinished on the endgame front, that usually meant the further north you got, the less content and landmarks you'd find. Instead, you'd often just find absurdly high-level monsters roaming the area. However, one interesting detail still exists from this area, the name itself. The Japanese name for Ageless Wise is Old Ageless High Road, and comes from the ancient remains of a road in the area. Some scholars speculate that the road in question was already old by the time of the Allegan Empire in the Third Astral Era, but because it's impossible to know for sure, it's purely speculation. The road's age and origin is unknown. Despite knowing this, I could never find any remains of this road in the area. Back to Bloodshore, and just south of the camp you'd find Goldperch Tower. This lighthouse was constructed to warn ships navigating the Strait of Merlthor and the Deadly Shallows on the Bloodshore coast. It also served as a way to give Lominsons advance warning of pirates and Sahagin raids. Up until patch 1.18, La Noscea had the same theme running throughout the entire map. The theme would stand as one of the most iconic themes in the game, and still remains one of my absolute favorite tracks in the game. I speak of course of on windy meadows. As the Calamity did its thing to Eorzea, Bloodshore's jagged cliffs, islands, and mountains got obliterated, most of South Bloodshore disappearing into the sea. Only the South Bloodshore upper level bridge remaining. Like a monument to the era we've since left behind. The western valleys of Bloodshore were whittled away by the combination of raging fire, water, and wind caused by the Calamity, causing this separated area to become Raincatcher Gully. Ageless Wise was struck with a gigantic fragment of Dalamud, upsetting the land and causing massive corrupted crystals to erupt from the ground. In the wake of the Calamity, Garlemald invaded eastern Lenosha and laid claim to the area, most likely destroying what little was left of the ancient High Road. In its place, Castrum Eorzeans was raised, and within it you'd find the entrance to the legendary raid, the Binding Coil of Bahamut. Following the Calamity, Master Gegaruju of Ul'dah bought the battered remains of South Bloodshore as no one wanted the land due to the soil being too salt-drenched to grow anything in. Gegaruju then took the land and constructed a large seaside resort, Costa del Sol, as well as planting new flora and fauna to breathe life into the once battered area. Close to the resort, one structure still stands, the only visible survivor from before the Calamity, Gullperch Tower. The tower is still intact, albeit visually somewhat upgraded, but it's still the same tower lore-wise and it's still in service. It's even more or less placed geographically correct as well. Turning the clocks back again to 1.0, we've got to take a look at something curious that never really became anything, but it's interesting to discuss nonetheless. Airship ramps. In 1.0, as I've covered in previous episodes, airships played a bigger role in Eorzea than it now does in A Realm Reborn. When chocobos and airships were introduced in patch 1.19, there was an often overlooked detail at the bottom of the official lodestone post regarding the airships. It read, "Airships will be introduced as a new mode of transport between the three city-states. To ride an airship, simply make your way to the airship landing in each nation and pay for your passage in Gil. Departure and arrival cutscenes will accompany each flight. The voyage itself, however, will be over in a matter of seconds. In the future, we will make it possible for adventurers to fully savor the experience of flying, taking in the sights and sounds while roaming the decks of their vessels." Although the game would rather quickly change focus from updating 1.0 to rebuilding it as 2.0, it was clear that there was an initial idea to make the airships do more than what we initially got. More of this was evident when these airship landing ramps started appearing all over Eorzea. These would usually be located far away from camps in remote areas of all zones of Eorzea. The most prominent one being this one located in the Black Shroud. It was long thought that this was the only landing in Eorzea, and that it was meant to be used by Ishgardians to trade with Gridania, as similar ramps could be found around Kurthus. But other ramps could be found in Lenosha and Thanalan as well. This strongly implied that these ramps could have been some sort of planned travel system where the airships perhaps made stops along the way to the major city-states. If the airships were intended to work in real time like the lodestone post suggested, it wouldn't be too crazy of an idea. Alas, this idea was never followed up in 1.0 or 2.0, and in A Realm Reborn, all the landings are retconned altogether. Still, it would have been interesting if they went through with it. Or would it? Let me know in the comments. And oh boy, here we are at the ending screen. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Remnants of a Realm. Hope you've had a good time. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Make sure you discuss what you've seen in this episode in the comments below as well. I'll be back next week with another episode of Remnants of a Realm. See you then, Eorzeans. Until then, may you ever walk in the light of the crystal.